Okay, welcome. We are going live this afternoon with Helen Vonderheide, a premier Akashic Records educator, practitioner, and speaker, and the creator of the Personal Pathway Blueprint. And today we will be talking about relationships and working in the Akashic Records in order to navigate our relationship with ourselves and also with others. And here is Helen now.
Hello.
Oh,
We've made it. We're here. I've been looking forward to this talk all week, and yeah, it's such an honor to have you. So, I gave a little bit of an intro just to say what we're talking about today, and I would love if you can maybe start off by just sharing a bit about your own background and work.
yes. Oh, and I've been looking forward to this as well. So thank you so much for the invitation to share space and to also merge both our communities. That's also really exciting and juicy. I'm going to share a little brief background of myself. I was introduced to the Akashic Records, I think about 10 years ago. And it was a curiosity to learn a little bit more. I was in a place in my life where I was eager to grow and to find resources that could help me heal, expand, and actually strengthen relationships. So I think when I first came to the records, I was at a big turning point in my life professionally. But I also had some relationships that were just on the fritz, not really, healthy or going in the direction that I wanted them to go in. And the records became this illuminating resource for me. So I went on to study. I did 5 practitioner certification classes, 3 teacher certification classes, and I just wanted to excel in my spiritual studies. And that ultimately led me now to the place I am, where as I had become more familiar with the Akashic Records as a resource for empowerment and transformation, I started to recognize everybody's journey as being so unique and
Mm,
personal. And I wanted to create something that would honor everybody's uniqueness. And that was how this personal pathway blueprint was created. It was to give everybody essentially this framework to create a a vibrational invocation to connect to the Akashic Records or beyond, wherever someone wanted to connect to,
mm,
um, and and just honestly for this non-physical energy as a resource to really meet who we are as a physical being. So that's kind of what brought me to where I am today. And I've been sharing this new work since like mid-February this year. And it's been, oh my goodness, it's been so fulfilling and rewarding to truly see each person being supported and honored for whatever their connection is, and for them to create that pathway, that channel for themselves. And obviously you did it on your own, and then you and I sort of worked together to just like chisel and make it so much more perfect for you. But that's where I am.
Thank you so much. And we are going to dig into almost everything you said because you brought up several really important points. One, how the Akashic Records are such an incredible resource to navigate relationships. And also the fact that we are in this point in our consciousness that we do need our own personalized way to connect to higher consciousness. And so I'm so excited for you to share much more about the blueprint. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about doubt and connecting to higher self today. But I want to first start just with the very, very basics for people that are new to hearing about this resource.
Mhm.
And can you explain a little bit like how would you describe the Akashic Records? And then how do we access them?
Yes. Oh, I love this question because in my new curriculum, so I developed new curriculum, and in the first class, one of the exercises that I guide everyone through is it's a few things, right? The first is your Akashic voice, your Akashic language. So it's starting to put words to something that you are already familiar with, but for you to really choose what words best define and express what that is. The second is spiritual ancestry. So you start to see that you have been connected all along, that whether there was physical or non-physical support, like you've always had this resource, this guidance. And then there's spiritual assessment, which is more about like, when did you first awaken to the relationship that you had with non-physical energy? So it wasn't the moment I took a beginning Akashic record certification class. What I started to see in my own journey is that when I was 7 years old and I was raised Catholic, I saw the priest at the altar in front of the church, and I knew he was connected to something that I was connected to as well. But I didn't want anyone between me and that. I wanted to have a direct relationship with it. And so that is actually the beginning of my own spiritual journey. And so we get to really see in this lifetime, when did that start and what did that look like? Because then we just sort of evolved over time to really develop and grow into the relationship that we have with this non-physical energy.
Yeah.
So what I call the Akashic Records is this non-physical resource. And this non-physical resource is so different for each person. And that's why the Akashic voice is, language is so important, because I want everybody to define like what's true to them.
Mm.
So for me, what the Akashic records are is it's a vibrational archive of all the imprints of our soul's journey. So it is everything that we have done, from feeling, thought, action throughout the existence of our soul. And really, one of the questions in the new classes is like, how old is your soul? How do you even quantify how old your soul is? But the records then become this resource for wisdom. As a soul, we have learned lessons, we have grown, and there is wisdom in all of these imprints. So we have tapped into these imprints consciously and unconsciously all the time. In fact, my 4-year-old niece is so connected to the Akashic Records. I called her today. I was like, "You're my wise sage. I need some guidance from you today." But again, it's something that we're connected to all the time. And then we've had teachers, and I'm so grateful for teachers like Linda Howe and so many more who have been able to define that for us and really carve out what the Akashic Records are, so baseline understanding. And then from there, the records become whatever you need them to be. So a lot of us come to the records for different reasons. I personally use my records because I like to step away from my mind, thoughts, ego, and I want to be a little bit more connected to what is like the soul level perspective. So I use that perspective to illuminate some of the challenges, to like decipher what is true and like what is my mind just telling me. I use it for healing, like when they being all the guides, whoever those are, reveal insight that is so true. Like I know it deep in my soul. It just heals everything. Like I don't even need to know what it heals. It just So I would love to know, you work in your records, and so I would love to know some of the benefits that you experience as you engage in this resource.
Yeah, it's, when you talk about the healing, there's something that is so settling and aligning when your soul hears something phrased in such a way that you're like, that. It's like almost just such a relief where the storm of the ego and the mind and the chatter can just be there, but not be the dominant feed of information that you're now resonating with. And so for me, like when I'll open the records and I'll ask a question, oftentimes I find this so interesting. Some of it'll resonate right off the bat. And then sometimes I'll have to like reread it the next day or the day after, and new things will stick out. And I'll be like, how did I miss this the first time? It's like, it's so profound. And I think to your point, for me, it's like that macro perspective so that I don't get so caught up in the minutia of my kind of human life, but without rejecting my humanity. It's like it's appreciating my humanity, and it's almost like a hug for the fact that I'm a human being, and there's something that is so important and powerful about that, not to bypass it and just jump into, oh, you're multidimensional and you can just forget this whole human existence. It's like, no, that's such a core piece of the work. And then, but like embracing it with humility and just like immense compassion that I feel when I open the records, like that is so healing for me.
Yeah. I love that you shared that because I'm simultaneously healing grief from a past romantic relationship, and then also stepping into starting to date. And I was talking to my best friend about this like really uncomfortable in between, and she said, "Let yourself be a human being." And I was like, it was so grounding, and I was like, "Oh my God." Yes, I am a human being with a heart, and my heart is like, it's broken, but it's also coming back together.
Yeah, and I think this is such a beautiful segue to actually dive into like how valuable it can be to work in the records with our masters, teachers, loved ones, ancestors, guides, source, all of our whoever we're calling on, because it does give that macro perspective. And so instead of saying, this person's causing a challenge for me, right? Like, what's wrong with X, Y, and Z? It's actually when we work in the records, we can almost reposition ourselves to lean into inquiry to learn about ourselves. And I think that is what's so powerful. It's like, why am I struggling with this? Why is this posing such a challenge for me right now? Help me to understand what lesson I'm learning right now. So I would love if you could talk a little about that.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Begin, because the lessons, they're so plentiful. Well, the first one that comes to mind, which I did share with you, this was from my past relationship. And there was an evening where the two of us got together, and I was sitting on the couch, and he had just arrived, and he sat in a chair across from me. And I was like, come sit down next to me. And he's like, no, I'm gonna sit on this chair. And I was like, no, come sit down next to me. And he's like, nope, I'm gonna sit right over here. And I asked in my record later, I was like, why is he being weird? And they said, you are weird. You are being needy and clingy. And I was like, oh my God, they keep it real. It's like they check us. And so I was like, I don't want to be needy or clingy. And then I really had to start looking at the relationship that I have with people outside of me to make me feel whole and complete. And then the inquiry led me on a personal journey to really discover what my needs were, how to meet my needs, and not to just dump it on somebody that I'm in a relationship with. So that I could probably say is going to be a lifelong journey for me, because I have continuous reminders when I am not giving myself what I need and I'm looking outside, and you kind of feel like everyone's abandoning you. Like, oh my God, why isn't this person available? Or I'm looking to this person for this and they're not giving it to me, because everything is continually teaching me to come back and slow down and to really see what those needs are and how to meet them.
Yes, 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 exactly. And I think that I remember having a session too where I was really trying to understand. Several people in the hum community and also myself were going through this feeling of like loneliness that felt disproportionate to what was going on. And I had opened the records to inquire, what is the root of this suffering, of this pain? And the perspective they shared, it was so profound. That was almost like, it was so obvious, and yet it was so perfectly phrased. I'll try to paraphrase it. In essence, they said that we are, oh, and also why does that then tie to us seeking comfort in romantic relationships? That was the other piece of the question. And they said that we all have this, what they called the mother wound, where pretty much from the moment we are born, we're literally ripped from the mother and have this experience of separateness. And our adult lives, as we're seeking romantic partnership, we're almost looking to like crawl back into that space of nourishment and protection and having our minds read and our needs met that we had for 9 months in the womb, and how it's misplaced on a romantic partner, thinking that this being one person can now be the solution to that deep, fundamental, core human need. And how, in fact, like we all can be that, not only for ourselves, but for each other. And that it's a confusion that we try to put it on a romantic partner, that's like a confusion that we have.
Mm-hmm. That was so beautiful. And I felt it when you said that. I was, yes, how uncomfortable for us as human beings.
Yeah. Yes, and that we can find like such deep empathy because all of us have that need somewhere. Like we all have this need to just feel completely connected, held, nourished, understood, taken care of, right? And it's like then how we go and seek that can either, support us or cause more suffering. So, yeah.
I wanted to, and thank you for saying that last comment, because as you said that, it reminded me that that is what we can find working in the Akashic Records. We can find that nourishment, that support. We can actually find answers to the things that we need to. I mean, sometimes it's like, I don't even know what I need, but there's a place to turn to that can reveal some of those very basic essentials. One of the things that Linda taught us in in her third book, Discover Your Soul's Path Through the Akashic Records, she teaches us about true and false responsibilities.
Ooh.
And true responsibilities nourish and fulfill you, and false responsibilities deplete and drain you.
Wow.
I'm continually using that as almost like the way I can start to measure some of my commitments and activities, and like, are those really true, for how I should be directing my energy and effort. And I turned to the record sometimes to be replenished, because again, we can turn this as a resource. But what they will always do then is remind us that we have the power to do this on our own, and they're available to guide us. But so it always comes back to you. It's like never outside of you, right? They're always like, hey, let's turn back in. What's the first step?
Yes, and thank you for that reminder of the importance of we can fill our own cup, we can nourish ourselves. And I think like one of the things that dawned on me in my own dating journey like not that long ago is pretty much like, okay, I'm projecting all of my needs onto this idea of a romantic partner, and actually all I really want is myself. I want like, and that's where the like truest nourishment is when we really connect with the essence of our own being. And then, you know, it's hard to find the right words to capture that, but yeah. And I would love to talk a little bit about how you distinguish in your own practice and like as you teach it, connection to, let's call it higher self or intuition, in
Yeah.
contrast with the Akashic Records, because people ask about this a lot.
Yeah, because it's such an important first step to connection, to go higher. Um, so there's a few ways. I mean, everybody's going to find the best way that supports them, but there's a few ways that I personally turn to connect and find that in myself. I'm really big on intention, and also intention, repetition, and listening. And I'm not talking about with like my human ears. One of my students says her spiritual ears, which I just love, because I'm like, it's so true, because it's not these human ears. So what I do is I'll have an intention, specifically when I want to connect to my higher self. I say this statement: it is my hope, intention, and desire to connect with the higher self of Helen Marie Vonderheide. So I say my full name. I say that 3 times. So it is my hope, intention, and desire to connect with the higher self of Helen Marie Vonderheide. And after I've said it for the 3rd time, I sit back in my chair, I quiet my mind, I drop into my body, and I just start to open myself up to whatever or however that connection wants to reveal itself to me. And the way that my primary, I would say, sense of receiving is that I'm clairaudient. So I actually, so the first thing that I do is I hear my higher self say hi, and then I say hi back. And then we just open up this dialogue. Hearing is not a common way for somebody to receive, but a sense of knowing is probably the most dominant. So a sense of knowing feels like your intuition. It feels like a very sharp piece of insight that just like gracefully plants itself into you. And then you're like, oh, like I just know, okay? Or like, oh yeah, that just came to me. I just know that is what it is. And sometimes people have a hard time discerning the difference between maybe their human self or their higher self. And I always say, and here's where we're getting into self-trust, I always say, just trust whatever comes to you. Because if you can't find trust at that base level, you are not going to strengthen the muscle. So just trusting whatever. Like if it was a simple thing like, what does my body need today? And I saw an apple, or like I heard apple, whatever the case may be. Like I trust that. I eat an apple and I'm like, okay, great. What's next? And so I always ask for like, what's next? Reveal the next step. What's the other action I can take once I eat an apple,
That's such an important point. I think the simplicity of hearing, knowing, understanding, and then what's the next thing I can do? Because I think, at least in my own experience, where the doubt really comes in is when I like make the action step way too big for what's actually needed. And so it could just be as simple as like, write this down for yourself. Like just acknowledge the fact that you're even knowing it. Because I think what happens is like we'll fight ourselves where we might have a knowing and then we're not ready for it, or we're not sure what to do with that or how to integrate it. And then it can become this like, you trick yourself and like, I don't know that, that's not here, like, because you're not ready to navigate it. But it's like, well, what's the next thing I can do right now to just be with that? And like, I love the simplicity of just like, eat an apple, listen to your body, because it really is that simple.
Yeah. And usually I won't receive anything else. Like if the suggestion I received was to eat an apple, I won't receive the next step until I take action on the first one.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because then it's like we think we know the whole thing, how it's going to pan out, but no, like that's not how it goes. I'll never forget this. I was hiking on a retreat one time, and it was such a profound moment because I was hiking and I all of a sudden I couldn't see where the trail was going. Like it just stopped. And so I was like, okay, that's scary. So I'm just going to walk up to wherever I can see and then see what happens. And I did that. And then like the rest of the next bit of the trail revealed. And it was like such an epiphany moment of like, this is all of life. Like, this is everything.
Oh, yes. I think also because we are in a relationship with life.
Mm.
If we can't trust, listen, and take action, what's next is not going to be revealed. I mean, it will always be revealed, right? Because we're moving forward. But if we're being really conscious about it, what is next will not be revealed. And you can sometimes get tripped up, and a lot of people say, I'm stuck, I feel stuck, or I'm blocked. And one of the things that when I do mentorships, I ask like, how receptive are you to spiritual guidance? And then what does it look like when you take action and follow through on spiritual guidance that you receive or that is given to you? Because receiving is one thing, but to be able to act on it is another. And the other thing about spiritual guidance, which is so funny, it's abstract. So sometimes it's not eat an apple. It could be something like, call your mom. And I'm like, well, I don't want to call my mom. I love my mom. I don't want to call my mom. And they'll be like, well, all right, you asked us. And then I realize, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally needed to call my mom. And it just makes so much sense. You call your mom and you're like, I understand now. I mean, that's like my the biggest like statement that I say to myself, but I'm really like saying it to life or the universe or just whatever. It's like, I understand now. Like, I understand.
Yes, yes. It's funny. It's almost, I was joking with some friends that I want to get the tattoo that says, of course, just tattooed on me somewhere. Because I'm like, it's always that obvious, right? But like once you get it, then you're like, yeah, duh. But I would love to talk a little bit about the how. So the how of now we know what the Akashic Records are. We know the importance and how valuable it is to work with this resource. Now, your whole body of work has been to develop this incredible blueprint. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So first and foremost, both were first trained to work in the records, I think consciously and deliberately. I don't want to speak for you, but we were first trained with Dr. Linda Howe's pathway prayer to access the heart of the Akashic Records. And what that does is, I always said, it just felt like the key to the universe. So for people who maybe starting off for the first time in connecting to their intuition or higher self, you could perhaps just try through intention or maybe through statements. Of course, meditation, you can, obviously access and tap in as well. For people who maybe have a really strong connection with their intuition and their higher self and they're ready to go to the next level, you can perhaps try Linda Howe's pathway prayer, because that is an incredible way to just start dipping your toe into the water and exploring it with something that's already been developed and created. And then also, no matter where you are on the spectrum, if you are feeling really called to have your own way to work in the records, I created this 7-step blueprint. And when we're tapping into the records, we're working with steps 1, 2, and 3. And the first step being the opening, creating an opening, almost like an opening invocation, a statement to want to connect with this energy and information. The second part is the closing. So actually the opening is please and the closing is thank you. So it's please, thank you. So in the opening and the closing, which is parts 1 and 2, there's a series of questions. And all you have to do is start reflecting and answering these questions to the best of your ability. And you can use your intuition. So some of the questions are, what beings of energy do you want to work with? Some people don't know, but you can, again, just use your intuition to start to tap in. I mean, it could be as simple as spirit guides, angels. When I work in the records, I work with masters, teachers, ancestors. We have previously with Linda Howe's work, we're trained to work with masters, teachers, loved ones. But what I wanted to really bring forward was like all my ancestors, as well as my loved ones. Everybody works with something different. Some people work with ancient pharaohs of Egypt, Mayan energies. Oh my God, timelines. Like I have just seen such a wide variety of so many different beings of energy or just energy in general that people want to work with. So just really start to search your heart and see what comes to you. And then the questions start to get a little bit more detailed. So what we're doing is we're starting to create a key. We're chiseling this matter, this way for somebody to connect. And so you start reflecting on all these questions in the opening and the closing. And then you take the blueprint questions away. And what you're left with is all of these reflections. And then from there, you're really just shaping that into kind of like a poem or just something that's really specific and deliberate about invoking in this energy and information. And after it's complete, you want to edit, refine, play around with it, test it out. And we don't get into like some of the other steps in the blueprint until a little bit later, because what it's doing is like once you have a working draft of your pathway, you then create guidelines that are going to support and strengthen this practice and connection that you have to this non-physical energy. And then we get all the way to the bottom, like the 6th step is, oh my God. Okay, so the 6th step is naming your pathway. And here's why this is so exciting, because the Akashic Record practitioners now are a bridge generation. So we're bridging how far we've come, where we are now, to where we're going, which is ultimately not needing a pathway to access the records, but to truly live and embody the Akashic Records, to have them as available to us as breathing air. So naming your pathway is so important, because even though you create this invocation and you name it, in the future, we're going to start to play with just using the name of your pathway to immediately tune in and have access to this energy.
Wow.
So for example, like my pathway is, source of the Akashic Records, right? It's like, I think it's like pathway to the source of the Akashic Records. We'll just call it source of the Akashic Records. So in the future, instead of me reciting everything that's in my pathway, just simply using the title or the name to like fully embody that invocation, to tap in and have everything available for me as I need it.
Wow, that's beautiful, powerful, and makes so much sense. It's funny because when I first connected with Linda's prayer and I was trying to describe it, to me, it's like a mantra. It's basically like you are dialing in a certain frequency. And it's so similar, but the way you just described, all you need is actually the name, and the name now holds all this energy, information, access.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I would say for our listeners, for everybody joining in, we're going to share the pathway blueprint.
Yes.
And so just giving everybody an invitation to start reflecting on these questions, seeing intuitively what comes to you.
Yes. And we had talked about sharing the blueprint and more specifics in the next one. And then for this one, we have specific reflection questions, which should I pull them up? Is it time?
Yeah.
Okay. We have reflection questions, which are, here we go. Okay. We have 3 that you channeled, Helen. And I would love, so maybe what I'll do is I'll read them. I'm going to also post them to Instagram after this. So that way, who's ever tuning in, you can see them. But also, I would love for you to talk about why these came through, because you had a whole explanation. So I'm going to read them first. Then we'll go into, okay, why is this important? And then we'll share them after the talk. So the first one is, what is the current state of my relationship to my higher self? Then, how would I define the relationship I have with myself? And the last, what does my relationship look like with others and my environment?
Mm.
So, talk to us about these, Helen.
So I did open up my records and I asked for some guidance around these questions. And the first question being, what is the current, and I might have to ask you to just remind me so that I can provide a little bit more context to each of those questions. But I think the first one was, what is the current state of my relationship to myself?
What is the current state of my relationship to my higher self? Yeah.
Oh, higher self. Okay. Oh, higher self, they said?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, oh, I just love working in the records. So one of the very first things that they shared with me as we were preparing for this, both of us as we were preparing for this, is they were saying it's really important to, in this series, because it's a 2-part series, to essentially break things down into bite-sized pieces. So first, looking at the relationship that we have with ourselves, then the relationship that we have with others, then the relationship that we have with the world or our environment, planet at large. And so first looking at the relationship that we have with ourself, and specifically in this question with our higher self, it's to start evaluating what is that current state of relationship that we have to this inner part of ourself. And that is sort of leading us down this inquiry of, do I consciously connect to my higher self in some way, shape, or form? If I do, and I'm asking for guidance, am I listening? And if I am listening, am I taking action? And if I take action, how has that brought benefit into my life? May or may not, right? But most of the time, if we're inquiring our higher self, it is bringing benefit because our higher self just has a big picture perspective of our human experience. And so all the, wisdom or insight we're receiving from our higher self is really just to help us navigate the earthly stimulation.
Mm.
So they wanted, I remember with this question, they wanted us to start to look at what it is without judgment, because it isn't about us doing something right or wrong, but being aware of the building blocks to connect. Because we did talk about in our second IG live, we would really get into the blueprint, but we had to have a foundation.
Yeah.
So this first question is bringing our awareness and attention to these important building blocks to have this connection to that higher perspective that is available for us.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think it's so important too, the last part that you mentioned about reflecting on moments that we have connected with our higher self and how that has served us. Like, I think that there is really important information in recalling that, because at least in my own experience, I can tell the difference between when I'm clear and when I'm like really trying to be clear, but I'm not clear. And oftentimes there's like a subtlety in the energy. It's like when I know that I'm really clear, there might still be nervousness or ooh, that's challenging, but it's not anxiety provoking. It's a different flavor of energy. Whereas when I'm not clear, there's like a lot of like fear, scarcity, anxiety, contracted energy. And then clarity doesn't have, at least in my experience, I'm curious to hear yours, like those notes in it. Like it doesn't have those notes in it. It might be like, ooh, that sucks, I don't want to do that. But it's still like it comes with that grounded, deeper embodied knowing of like, they're right, I'm right, we have to do this.
Right. Oh, it's so true. Ugh. Well, I was thinking about the second question,
Yes.
and it's about defining the relationship that we have with ourself or with others.
This one, you said, how would I define the relationship I have with myself? And then the third one was, what does my relationship look like with others and my environment?
Okay. Here we go. I just made a little note. This part.
Hold on, I can't hear you because whenever there's a background noise, let me just close this. It like blocks out your sound. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You're ready. We're ready.
Okay. So these last two questions are about being honest and a self-assessment. And they want everyone start to define words to the relationship that they have with themselves. So such as, I'm feeling disappointed because I'm not accomplishing some of the things that I would like to do, or I am feeling really successful because I have started to just take bite-sized pieces and be really present with myself and with just, making little steps of progress along the way. So beginning to put words to to defining the relationship that we have with ourselves as a self-assessment, and then starting to look at what does that look like in our relationships with others, and then our environment, because when we work in the records, it always comes back to us. And if we can't start to see what may feel imbalanced or imbalanced in the relationships that we have with self, others, environment, then we can't start to establish harmony within, and of course with the support and guidance of our spiritual teams. So, and also, yes, the information that's available in the records for us around that. So they wanted, whoever wants to participate with us, wanted us to start to do this assessment, because when we use the pathway blueprint, it will become a very deliberate, conscious, co-creative key to the universe. So what I mean by that is where we start to recognize how we can grow, evolve, transform, heal, desires, wants, needs. Like, all of those things are so important, and they actually find their way into the blueprint. Because as we inquire into this resource for the guidance, all of those important things that we are aware of, they make their way into it, and they are accounted for with all of the wisdom that we receive from the records. So it's like everything is accounted for. Everything is taken care of, whether we consciously realize it or not. So yeah, we might know, right? We might make notes for everything and feel like we've included everything. But what's so beautiful about working in the records, and especially with this, the pathway blueprint, is it is meant to be an evolutionary pathway. So if, like, down the line you're like, oh shoot, I want to incorporate, let's just say, like, transitioning my business now into doing events and working with groups, or just sort of expanding my reach, let's say, because that feels a little bit more broad. And I would say sometimes, like, the broader and also specific, broad and specific we are, like, the life just, like, knows how to help us manifest the things that we need. And so it's amazing because it's all in the blueprint, and as it evolves with you and you evolve, you can adjust it accordingly.
Yeah, that is beautiful and true. I feel that that's come through. I've had to make little tweaks with my own even over the last few weeks, and I was not aware of the naming it aspect, and I'm gonna try that. I'm really I'm
Oh my
excited about that.
yes, we're going to make sure that the naming it is the sixth step in the blueprint. And that is just so fun. Like, the names, oh my God, the names. Again, it's like, it's so fulfilling to see people also put a name to this sacred relationship that they have, like, with themselves and beyond.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And to, like, boil it
Yeah.
down, like, a couple words or a few words or whatever it is, could feel like you are excluding or limiting. But the thing is, the name embodies everything that you are, everything that you want. So it's really funny. It's actually a paradox, I feel. It's like the title just feels like it could, but it's not. Like, it's so much more than that.
That makes so much sense. It's true. And I feel like as we too start to move into, like, we need to say a lot less to say a lot more, right? Even in how we communicate as individuals with one another, it's also going to start to mirror that. We don't have to say so much. It's in our energy.
Yeah, it's very similar to music, to songs. It's like the title of a song, and then it just embodies this, story, journey, whatever the case may be. Very similar.
Beautiful. So I feel like we're at a really beautiful pausing point maybe for today's session, and then we'll pick up on the 11th to really dive into each of these parts, these building blocks of the blueprint. And people can reach out to us in between, really reach out to Helen. But if you want to reach out, I can connect you, but it'll all be in the notes for this IGTV. And what else? Anything else you want to say before the next time, other than we'll share the reflection? Yeah.
Just share one thing. Yes,
Yeah.
we'll share the reflections, and that is a very important first step. I'm going to do it. And I would love for everyone to do it as like just the building blocks for this series that you and I are collaborating on. And then also in my Instagram profile,
Bio. Mm-hmm.
there is a link. I think it's called like Instagram links or something. I don't know, whatever. It's in my profile, the website. You click it, and there actually is a link for the pathway blueprint. So it is on my profile for easy clicking and availability for everyone. If people like have done the first step and then want to get their hands on that pathway blueprint so they can start to reflect, you guys can find it there.
Perfect. And I'll remind people of that in the notes, just to say, go to Helen's bio, click the pathway blueprint. That way you can come to the next session having really looked through that. That's perfect. Yay, Helen, thank you so much. This was such a treat to just get to chat with you and learn from you and have you share your incredible, incredible experience, wisdom, and spirit with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This was so beautiful. Such an honor to just share this with Hum Hum and you. And thank you so much for putting it together.
Ah, it's such a delight. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the 11th.
Can't wait.
Me too. Bye, everyone.